Hey, it's Mirna from Happiness Academy. Welcome to the Happiness Academy podcast, a place where you can discover practical, simple, yet effective tools from the science of positive psychology. You're at the right place if you're looking to live a life of well-being and joy, staying resilient when facing any challenges, and incorporating a sense of meaning in things you do. Ready? Let's dive in.
Ready? Today we are tackling a big one, and that is what to do when we fall into worry, when we start to overthink or overanalyze everything around us. And when we fall into these patterns, they're not constructive, they're not helping us act on things, they're not helping us being focused and being bold. In fact, they're only sabotaging us. So what we want to do is we want to have this worry or anxiety or overthinking a little bit more, I wouldn't say under control, but we want to have influence over them and be able to move them away a tiny bit and park them a little bit when we want to spend our energy on something else. And that's what we're talking about today, about 7 different tips or tools or strategies that you can implement when you fall into those moments and patterns of worry and overthinking. Now, a big disclaimer, you don't change your brain overnight with one quick tool, right? There is no silver bullet, there is no magic pill to really change your thinking patterns and redirect them into directions that are more constructive, more positive, better for well-being. That's a hard work, and that's a training that requires a bit of consistency. You can also find such training on Happiness Academy in several formats. One of them is an online course on mindset called Build Powerful Mindset. Another one is online course on resilience called The Art of Resilience. On both of these, we work over a period of 9 weeks with 2-hour call each week on really training your mind and your mindset and learning new tools and moving ahead in this. Then the other area where you can work on this deeper and with more practice is working on your mindfulness. So doing meditations that are more about body awareness, about thought observation, checking up some of the mindfulness courses and getting on board with those and learning more about how your mind works and how to work with it. Some of the places that are amazing to learn that are Vipassana retreats, which are silent retreats of 10 days to teach you to meditate, or MBSR course, which is mindfulness-based stress reduction courses. And then also on Happiness Academy, we work with mindfulness in 2 formats. One is on a week-long retreat, very enjoyable experience, but also with a lot of learning, which we call learning getaways. I'll link it also in this under this episode in case you want to check it out, where we practice mindfulness by kind of full immersion for a week with a lot of reminders, a lot of conversations about mindfulness, and a lot of tools that you gain. And then also I'm preparing an on-demand course on mindfulness that will teach you a lot of tools. And I would recommend not to stop at this video, but really to also find different ways on working with your thoughts, because patterns like worry and anxiety and overthinking, while I'll give you some really good and practical tips today, it's not a way to tackle them with a quick tip. You need to also have long-term strategy. Where are you developing? So with that in mind, I will share though quite some tips today that you can use already. Now, I'll share 7 of them and we'll play on very different levels. Some of them, like the first one that I'll share, will be very quick tip or a tool or a technique, even a trick to trick your mind into not worrying so much right now, into not overthinking, into kind of pushing that anxiety away just for a moment. And then there'll be others that are a little bit more sustainable strategy that you want to be developing, not just to tackle this event of worrying or overthinking, but also to be strengthening that capacity for the future. And well, these bigger ones, they work for both, but they're maybe a bit more demanding. And these easier ones, they're quick hacks for the moments when you really can't invest your effort and energy into building these that are a bit more long-term. So I'll kind of be switching a little bit back and forth between both. First one is definitely in the category of quick hacks. It's a little bit funny and it's something we call an hour to worry. And it basically says, Do not forbid your brain to worry. That's not effective. That would just mean to kind of push those overthinking or worrisome thoughts under the carpet, and it's a bit like pushing balloons underwater. Eventually they will start popping, and it's an effort to keep them there. So the point is not to totally push away those thoughts and never allow them to show up. But we do want to have mechanism of not having those thoughts controlling us and popping up whenever they want to, at times when it's really inconvenient for us. So one little trick that we can do is we can choose to dedicate half an hour, even our day, as a specific time slot when we worry. And we say, this is my hour to worry, or my half an hour to worry. And it can be, for example, at 11 in the morning. Not to say that's the best time to worry, just don't pick it at 11 in the evening. Other than that, pick your time slot that works well for you. And then what we do is any other time of the day, when some of these thoughts pop up, and some worries or overthinking or anxious thoughts, we basically say, hey, this is not my time for worrying. I'm worrying tomorrow at 11 a.m. or today at 11 a.m. So worries, park there, see you there. Basically, we just kind of gently push away those thoughts, but we also point them towards somewhere. And then in that moment, in that hour, at 11, for example, we truly give them some space. We sit down with ourselves and we say, okay, this is my hour to worry. Now for half an hour, 15 minutes, I'm thinking about every worry that I might have. I can journal about it, then just don't read it again. If you journal, throw it away after, okay? So you release it, but not regenerate it and strengthen it. Or maybe just think about it and I say, okay, what is worrying me? And just listen to yourself and allow yourself to express those worries. But then when that time slot passes, and it can be even shorter, like 15 minutes, but let's say this half an hour when they pass, you're like, okay, now until tomorrow 11, nothing, okay? That's my hour to worry. And we play day by day like that. It's surprisingly effective, so try it out. Now, the tool number 2 is a really, really powerful tool, and that's our body. When we run away too much in our mind and into overthinking and into generating all these anxious thoughts, one of the best things we can fall back to is to be more present in our body. When we are very present in our body, we cannot be fully in our mind and generating all this mess, right? So we can play with this concept in many, many ways. But 2, I would say, most fundamental ones are or by actually engaging our body actively in something else, like actually going to do some sports, actually going for a run, actually creating some mild or big physical challenge that we engage with right away in the moment when we start to worry. And that will take away our focus because it is challenging. It will take away our focus and we will have no space for that worry and anxiety. In other words, every time you start worrying, do 5 push-ups. It should be good, simple enough, or any variation of that. But the second variation of engaging with our body can be also more through simply shifting our awareness and being more mindful about the body. That can also help us to get away from the mind. And that can mean to do a small, short body scan meditation. Close my eyes, take a couple of deep breaths, check in different parts of my body and how do they feel. Or it can mean, even more effective, to engage with my senses. So, I don't know, to touch a plant, to touch a rock, to touch whatever, something around me in my environment, or to just become more aware of my senses, or to do exercise called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can Google it for detailed instructions or check in Mindfulness Made Easy ebook, which I'm attaching, which is basically to notice 5 things around me that I can see, to listen for 4 things I can hear, touch 3 things, and so on and so on. Basically engaging with some of the mindfulness exercises that brings us back a little bit more into our body. And this simple shift will shift us away from the overthinking. So tip number 3, don't worry if you're struggling to remember, I will remind you at the end of all 7. Tip number 3 is one beautiful tool or technique, which we call I have a thought. And this tool or technique basically means, or basically serves, to step away and create some distance from those worries. In other words, I still have those worries or thinking or anxious thoughts, but I create space from them by kind of seeing them a little bit differently. So while the thoughts are still present or worries, they're not as emotionally engaging and draining as they would normally be, or not as overwhelming. So how does it work? It's basically when I notice that I'm thinking some negative thoughts. For example, let's say I'm thinking this will all go wrong. I have an event later today and I'm thinking this will all go wrong. That's my repetitive negative thought. This will all go wrong, this will all go wrong. Now, how I can use I have a thought technique is basically saying, hey, when I notice that thought in my head, I can say, hey, I have a thought that this will all go wrong. It sounds very silly and very basic, yet it's immensely powerful. The moment you do it, it's like breathing in. You have space from that thought because you just labeled it. You weren't immersed in it anymore, but you labeled it. It's literally like you put it out of your head to observe it. You labeled it like only a thought. So basically we said everything will go wrong today. Instead of that, I'm thinking, hey, I have a thought that everything will go wrong today. And by saying that, I already have distance from it. And then I can ask, where is that thought coming from? Or what do I want to do with that thought? Or do I want to replace it with another thought? And anyway, I can keep on developing it in many ways. But it all starts with noticing the thought and saying, hey, I have a thought that this bad thing will happen. Now, if I want to leverage that even more, there is even next step, which is then I'm noticing that I have a thought that blah, blah, right? So in my case, if my thought was everything will go wrong today, then I can detach from that a little bit by saying, hey, I have a thought that everything will go wrong today. And then I can even say, hey, I'm noticing that I have a thought that everything will go wrong today. And with that thought becomes irrelevant. It's no longer in my head as a fact of life, but it becomes much more, it's just a thought. It's just something that's, floating there and passing by. Play with this one. If you're unsure which of the techniques to play with and try out, try this one. It's one of the easiest ones, yet one of the most effective ones. Now, technique number 4 is to simply find something else where we push and put our focus. And that way we have no capacity to stay involved in our thoughts. It's a little bit like the tool number 2, coming back to our body and engaging our body, but we can think broader. Body is one of the best tools because it can really pull in our attention and it's always kind of available. But we have also so many other things. For example, I can choose to draw something and put my attention there. I can choose to go and read something. I can choose to go for a walk in nature and make it a very mindful walk when I'm paying a lot of attention to trees and nature and whatnot. And when my attention is there, it's no longer in my worries. Or if I'm interacting with someone, I can put my big focus and attention on that person and listening better and on that conversation. And with that, I'm losing the capacity to worry. So basically, we step into the zone of worrying and overthinking and anxiety when we give it too much focus, when we give it too much space. If we can tape that focus onto anything else consciously and purposefully, it could even be like a question to journal on, like what is good about this, appreciation, what can I appreciate, anything really, or just creative writing question. But if I can put that focus somewhere else, then I literally do not have the capacity to worry as much. If I still do, I just need to find bigger focus to put into something else, bigger focus attention getter. So with that in mind, moving to number 5, and it's quite connected to the last one. Number 5 is mindfulness, training for more mindfulness, learning more mindfulness tools, and coming back to mindfulness as one of the ways of working with worry and these negative thoughts. And as I said at the beginning, we have many quick hacks here, and then we have some that are actually, a gym for our brain and that require some proper exercise and effort and that do not come easily. Mindfulness is definitely in this second category. It is something where I would encourage you to start developing that toolbox and that muscle of mindfulness in your life, because it's immensely powerful for our well-being and resilience, for positive emotions, for focus, for so many things. But it is not an overnight quick thing you develop just like that. It is a training for mind. It is something where you need to find the direction that works for you, where you need to try out different things until you find a good match, and where you need to keep on kind of training it. But what you get if you really get more and deeper into mindfulness is that you have more control over your attention, that you can choose more consciously. First of all, you can become more aware of what thoughts are happening in your head instead of being entangled in them. You can create space from those thoughts and emotions and reactions to those thoughts. And you can have more control in terms of choosing to put your attention into something else. And that's truly a superpower. Highly recommended to play with mindfulness more. And again, you can train that also with me in the Getaway or through on-demand course that I'm preparing. Or you can grab a small ebook that I'll attach here that's free with different exercises. But with mindfulness, it's all about consistency and action and experiences and practicing it. So find something that suits you, but yeah, get into it. It's worth it, I promise. Now, number 6, we have 2 tools to go. I hope you're still with me. I will summarize them then and invite you to find some of your favorites. Number 6 is so-called balloon technique or a package. And it's again, very quick, simple hack. If you have a recurring thought that's a little bit, negative or annoying or worrisome or anxious or whatnot, you can simply put that thought in imaginary balloon and let that balloon go. I know, sounds silly again, wonderfully effective though. And this is especially great if your thought is more visual, if your thought is more of an image, but it works for sentences as well. You basically capture that thought and you're like, oh, look, this thought, oh, I put it in balloon and I imagine it flying away. What does it happen here? It just happens that you refocused your attention because you were imagining balloon instead of staying in your image. And then you created a bit of that emotion of letting go by letting the balloon go. And these 2 in combination wonderfully gave you some space from your thought. A similar different version, if you prefer it, is to pack the thought in a nice package like a gift, wrap it up, wrap a bow around it, and put it to drift down a little stream of water. Again, very similar. It's just because it takes a bit more to imagine, to kind of wrap it up, that takes away your attention, and then the act of letting it go and drift away actually creates that feeling of letting go and clearing it out. So let go of the thought in balloon, wrap it up in the package, whatever it is, imagine that little visualization and let it go. It's very simple, it's very effective. Okay, and the last one, number 7, is the biggest one and the toughest one. That one is all about working with your mindset. And this is basically to learn more about what are your repetitive negative thoughts. Being it that you're prone to worry or anxiety or just like perfectionism, hyper-controlling, overthinking, indecisiveness, whichever of these, and there could be many, many more, blaming or self-blaming or feeling guilty or whatnot, whichever of these patterns you might have, it loses in its power to a big part, not completely, but to a big part, when you uncover it and when it becomes familiar and when you learn which strategy works for that specific pattern. Now, that is also something we play on the mindset course on Build Powerful Mindset. So you might want to join me there to check that out and work with that and work through your patterns. But it's also something that you can discover by building more awareness of your thoughts, which you can gain through meditation when you observe your thoughts, and also through journaling, putting your thoughts down to paper, noticing some of the patterns. So it is a work you can do on your own as well, with a lot of kind of self-observation of your thoughts and journaling, or you can also do it with psychologist, therapist, coach, somebody who will help you nail down and figure out those tendencies and patterns. It is difficult though, because we are so immersed in our mental habits that it's really hard to recognize what am I doing that's a bit specific, what is my tendency. So do expect that this type of work will require a bit of effort. It's not like a 5-minute thing, you journal once and now you know it all. But again, it's quite worth it because it's liberating, it gives you more space, and in a positive way, a bit more control over your thoughts and thinking patterns. I hope you'll keep on exploring this topic. Again, if you want to keep on exploring it together, you might want to join me on Mindset, like Build Powerful Mindset online course. Check the link in the podcast episode description, or you might join me for Getaway to practice mindfulness in that beautiful immersive environment, or learn some new tools with Mindfulness on Demand course. I'm linking it all, but you're also very welcome to get in touch and ask me more about it if you're curious if it's the right experience for you. Now, I will very quickly summarize the 7 things I mentioned, because otherwise they'll all get lost and you'll forget about all of them. If you have any further questions on any of these, don't be shy to reach out. You can always reach me through the comments. You can also reach me through Happiness Academy Instagram or through LinkedIn with my name and last name, Mirna Smith. And finally, maybe the best way to reach me is if you're on Happiness Academy newsletter, to simply hit reply to any of the emails, and that one lands directly in my inbox, and it's the most direct way to get my attention. So if you have any comments, questions, ideas related to the topic today, don't be shy. I would love to hear them and also use them to shape future episodes. Now, I'll go through a quick summary. I'll invite you to pick one you'll be practicing today and in the following days. First one was having an hour to worry, parking worries for specific time of the day. Second one was, in the moment when we start to overthink, engaging with our body more. It could be through action or through putting awareness on our body, but it's engaging with our body. Third one was to add, I have a thought before that thought. So if the thought is everything will go wrong, noticing it and then saying, hey, I have a thought that everything will go wrong. And then maybe even, hey, I notice that I have a thought that everything will go wrong. And with that, we are creating distance. Fourth one was to find something to put our focus on. A writing, creative writing exercise, a meditation, a conversation, a drawing, a creative endeavor, something where we engage our attention actively so there is no space to think. Fifth one was mindfulness, to practice mindfulness tools and techniques so we would guide our attention more intentionally and consciously. Sixth one was to put any negative thought in a balloon or a package and put it down the river, let it go down the river, and to do that as many times as needed whenever that thought pops up. And finally, the seventh one was to spend a bit more attention in learning and exploring what are our thinking traps and what are our tendencies and what are specific ways to work with our specific patterns and traps. And again, that's something you can do also with me on the Mindset course. That's something that you can also do on your own through journaling, observing, and so on. So which one is it for you? Which of these 7 will you put in practice today? Please do put one of them in practice, because if you came today to join me for this podcast, it does mean you want to get better with dealing with worry and overthinking. So use the chance and the ideas you heard here and pick one and put it in practice already today.
Thank you for exploring this topic with me. I hope you found some exciting ideas and tools that you will use already today. Remember, they only work if you put them in practice, but then they make all the difference. If you like Happiness Academy podcast, do leave us a rating and a review. It will be really helpful. And if you haven't done it yet, click on the links in the episode description to discover free materials and valuable resources to dive in deeper. See you in the next episode or at the Happiness Academy newsletter.